What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Marketing Grind, where we explore the daily grind of B2B marketing from inside the trenches, talking about what's working, what's not, and why it all matters. I'm Gary, back again with my brother Mack. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Can't complain. Just in the grind as always. Especially at the end of a long Wednesday. I'm happy to get a little pick me up in me and talk about some marketing topics.
You're tired. You're tired. I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah, it's been a long 3 weeks, and we'll get to it. But I'm onboarding into a new role, so it's been nuts. So, but I'm feeling good, feeling all good about it.
Wow. Well, yes, we're going to dig into all of that journey and everything that you're going to, the grind, the new grind that you got going on. But as always, got to kick things off with a little coffee. So, what are you drinking today?
Yeah, so you know what I'm drinking? It's a can from La Colombe. It's a triple shot draft latte. You could
Okay.
probably find these in stores, like I did. But they've got retail shops around the country. Brazilian beans. I've never been to one of their shops, but they're supposed to be pretty good. But you know what? I'm gonna pour one of their little draft lattes. I'm just gonna go hard pour on it.
Nice.
And that's what I'm going to do for this show.
That looks good. That looks good.
Smells really good.
Nice.
What about you, man? What are you drinking?
Okay, so I got to switch it up. I've been kind of going down the same road for the past few episodes. I got something new, something special, something I've never done before. This
New
is
sponsor to the show.
new sponsor, Java House Cold Brew Coffee. This is a full gallon of cold brew in a bag with a nozzle. So I skipped the glass entirely. I'm just going to just go straight from the tap
You're going straight.
on this one. No, I have a glass. I have some ice. But
No,
yeah, I
no, no,
bought
no, no, no. You've promised it. Like we got to see the straight from the spout.
yeah, ordered off Amazon. So it's been sitting in a warehouse. It's traveled the dusty road all the way
Eh,
to
but it's
to
but
my
it's
house here.
convenient.
And
We know that cold brew can age fairly well in some capacities.
yeah, so we'll see what happens with it. I guess I'll give it a pour first and see what's up. I don't know if I'll be able to do this on
It's
camera
okay.
here. Let's see.
We don't
I'm gonna have to
you know
like.
we don't want to make a mess.
Here we go.
Yeah, you can do that. There you
Ooh,
go.
juicy. I don't know if this is a concentrate, so I guess I'm just gonna fill her all the way up.
Oh yeah, you should have read that ahead of time because some
Yeah,
of those can be.
it poured pretty well.
Honestly, I think like most of those are not concentrates. Like they're like geared to just you filling them up over ice and adding some milk.
Yeah, I think so. 100% Arabica coffee beans steeped for over 12 hours for an amazingly smooth taste.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Okay. And the key to any good cold brew at home. I've done this before and I'll do it again. You gotta froth. Aerate the cold brew. There we go.
Okay, crowbars up.
Cheers.
Ooh. Well, I'll just dig into mine. Mine,
Please.
you know what? I was kind of skeptical because when you buy anything from the store and it's prepackaged, you never know. Um, this triple draft latte, you get it. Like I think oftentimes it's too weak, and you're just like, it's just sugary, sweet, milky. That's got some kick to it from an espresso side. Um, and if you do the hard pour like I did, it's frothy, it's creamy. I dig it, man. La Colombe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but you know, I'll endorse it.
Nice. I won't be buying this again. This is
Okay.
very average. If
Well,
you're
you're very spoiled too when it comes to cold brew. So
if you're in a bind, it'll do the trick. But I have several kind of emergency cold brew options here at home. One of which being the Kirkland Signature Can Cold Brew. I still have some of those frozen
I love that one.
pods
Yeah.
that I shared with you a while back. Um,
Yeah. You just like, those are the ones that are like ice. It's, you just like drop it in water, right? And it just dissolves.
yeah, it just dissolves. So
Yeah.
this is it's not terrible, but it lacks boldness, it lacks flavor. It's got like very, very kind of mild, um, smoky chocolate.
You're really getting after it.
Yeah, and like a little,
This is,
it reminds me of like Rice Krispies a little bit. It's got kind of that like Rice Krispie flavor. It's light, very light. But anyways, it's going to do the
yeah,
job. It's going to
it's
do the job.
crackery. I only can relate to that because I just made Rice Krispie treats with my daughter, and so I have a bag of Rice Krispie, like leftover Rice Krispies in the cabinet, and
Yeah.
so every so often I'll just like kind of throw some back in my mouth. So it's like that, like it's like light cracker, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
otherwise,
Yep.
I'd have no idea what you mean.
No, you got it. You got it. That's exactly it. So it'll do the job here while we have this conversation. And yeah, there's another brand of box cold brew that has been advertising to me ever since I got this. And so I
Is it
may
the bear? Is it like Black Bear
the
or
Wandering Bear.
something?
Yeah.
Wandering Bear? Yeah, yeah. That's the one I've had.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it. They have a toasted coconut one, and the toasted coconut's like my jam. So I'll probably give that a try for a future episode. But Java House is a one and done. Will not buy again.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So, all right. Well, now we got our coffees. Let's dig into this week's topic. Yeah, you kind of let the cat out of the bag early here. You uh, transitioned to a new job recently, and I think me and everyone else that's listening wants to hear all about it. Um, what's going on in your world?
Yeah. So basically going from marketing of one to marketing of 100. No, I don't know if it's 100. Honestly, I don't know the size of the marketing team um, where I'm at now. But yeah, so I was at a smaller organization, again, marketing of one, and then moved to a new team in fintech, B2B SaaS still, but a much more established company, publicly traded, and joined their customer marketing team, which is just an offshoot of the larger organization. So they got demand gen, they've got product marketing, they've got some other marketing, and even within customer marketing, there's engagement, advocacy, and I'm part of the growth team. And I think it really kind of suits me well because, as we've talked about in the past, we're very customer focused, at least in our ideals and the way we sort of lean into our strategy and tactics, um, and um, and from a growth mindset, it really leans into what I was doing in product marketing before, in like upselling and cross selling. So you're really getting into the platform, and so this new company, it's called Vertex. They're a tax compliance software at its core, um, and they deal with all the big enterprise resource, systems and enterprise resource planning systems. And so my job is essentially trying to get our current customers to move on to other products and utilize different features of our current products and all that good stuff. But yeah, like it's a large marketing team. As I mentioned, they're publicly traded. Uh, there's a whole marketing operations department. So it's not like, you're going into a startup and you're coming in and being like, I'm the guy touching all the buttons. I'm the guy turning all the wheels.
Right.
I very much came into this like, wait a second, you got to submit a request for this. You got to do this. You got to learn this. And it's like, oh, okay. I can deal with that, which is, it's nice to have some guardrails and some systems in place, but it's very different than what I've ever done before because I've always come from that startup world, which is like, hey, here are the keys, you know, go drive the car.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's like the big topic is like really like um, what is it like going from small team to large team? What are the pros and cons? Because there are some. As I'm learning this new role, it's uncovering, um, like the good things about it, but also the pitfalls.
Yeah.
And speed is one of them. And I know we'll get into a bunch of different topics, but yeah, it's just a whole different world that I've never had before in the market in my marketing experience. I've always been startup growth, you know, do your thing, as do it, ask questions later type of
Yeah.
mentality. So it's a whirlwind and it's a lot to learn.
Yeah, I can imagine. Most of my experience has also been startup, smaller, nothing on the large scale side. So I know with most people in general, and but zooming in on marketers and zooming in on B2B specifically, the grass is always greener on the other side. When you're agency, you want to be in house. When you're a startup, you want to be enterprise. I want the resources. I want the budget. I want the team. I want the buy-in. And then I imagine that on the enterprise side, there's similar mentality where, oh, I want to move faster, I want to do X, Y, and Z. So it's going to be really interesting for you and kind of seeing what that other side looks like. And I'm curious to get your perspective. So how many days in are you now? Like a couple weeks in, a few weeks?
Yeah, I mean this is week 3, so pretty much 14 to 16 days here. We had a holiday, so short week last week. Um, yeah, where it's really learning the process and learning the MarTech systems that we're using to execute all of our campaigns. But it's also, meeting the teams, like the cross functional teams, because, what I've learned here and what I've always championed in my past roles is having good relationships with the other marketing departments.
Yeah.
And it's no different with customer marketing, especially with customer success and the sales team, and obviously product marketing. If they release new features, we got to kind of communicate that to customers. So it's sort of building these relationships too. It's not just coming in and being like, hey, I'm Mac, new hire, I'm just going to do my own thing. It's coming in and using those learnings that I had from those small teams,
Mm-hmm.
and the initiatives that I had, growing those small teams, to be like, okay, now I'm like a smaller piece of the puzzle, but let me still have that mentality in mind when I'm creating those relationships with everybody else, to say like, hey, I've sort of been in your shoes before. I have a good understanding of like these other teams and how they function, how our relationship is really set up. So I'm just trying to take all that into what I'm doing today.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Good perspective. Yeah, good perspective going into it. So let's break it down. There's probably kind of a handful of areas that you've been exposed to so far that you're noticing kind of like clear differences night and day from what you've seen in at the smaller startup company level and what you're seeing in your current role. And I'm sure those things will continue to increase as you spend more time in your new role. But yeah, maybe walk me through some of the big things that are standing out to you early on that are like, oh, this is different, and I want to hear kind of what those are, and then maybe unpack a little bit about like what's good about it, and then like maybe what you might miss about doing it at the small scale.
Yeah, I think the largest thing is like the resource and budget area. I've been in the last couple of organizations, especially my last. there was no budget. There was no money to do certain things or activate certain channels or to experiment in certain ways. And I was a solo marketer, so resources were pretty much nothing. Um, Here, it's like we have a problem spending money, or I should say, we have a problem not spending money.
Oh,
To
right.
where so where it's like, hey, if we don't spend this, it's almost like that episode of The Office, where like Michael needs to spend money on something,
Yeah.
or else like they're going to take it for next year's budget. Like that's kind of how it is, where it's like, let's spend this money so like we can show finance that like we do need this and we can request more money next year. So it's kind of like that, where it's like there's a deficit, and it's almost like for us, it's because we're such a newer team. So in customer marketing, there's three different departments. There's engagement, advocacy, and the team that I'm a part of is growth. So growth is specific to upsell, cross sell, and because we're newer, we're dedicating more resources, more budget into the activities that we're doing, which is awesome. Um, and so that's all great. Obviously for like a small team, you're like, oh, well, then you got to, you know, there's forecasting, there's spreadsheets, there's budgeting, all this stuff you have to kind of get involved with. Luckily, I don't have to deal with that. I just have to worry about spending the money and requesting the money and say, hey, can I get 5K here, 5K here? So that's really cool. I think from my experience being a part of a large team, you got some more resources, you got more budget. Um, Sort of the flop side of that is sort of the process and maybe something like the creativity, because you sort of have to adhere to the brand guidelines, and so okay, you need some creative. You're not making that yourself, or you're not really dictating what that looks like. You're just sort of giving specs. You can give some suggestions. I'm not quite there yet in my experience, but this is just what I'm learning. That the brand team just sort of churns out, what they've decided on. This is what our brand looks like. And the same in the same capacity is the sort of like the speed. Um, Large team, small team. You're scrappy. You got to do things quick. You put things out fast. You iterate. Put the next thing out fast. With large teams, especially in the role that I'm in now, this is probably the biggest thing. Is there's a whole plan. Like H2 is like planned out. Here are the initiatives that we're focusing on in Q3. Here are the initiatives we're focused on in Q4. Things are probably going to change. There's still room for flexibility, but things are pretty much set in stone. And so in that sense, the things that someone like myself, are setting up are things that are really dictated already in advance. And so that's like really the biggest thing is the planning.
Hmm.
That's probably the toughest thing that I have to really wrap my head around, because startup growth stage, what you want to do in Q3. Boom, here we go. We pivot, so on and so forth. But we're really looking at second half of the year, and it's set in stone,
Yeah.
and it's all aligned with like product marketing, like and product, like what features are getting released. Even if those dates change, they're not going to change much. So everything is really set in stone and really aligned with launch dates and different activities across the organization. And so marketing it's not just marketing, right? I'm just customer marketing. And so
Hmm.
that's just a different, box that I'm put in that is, it's cool and exciting because I get to focus on a certain segment. Um, but yeah, you're really limited in sort of like your freedom in what you want to do.
Yeah. I think something you said a little bit ago that kind of came out, and what I imagine is probably not as cut and dry as the way you made it seem, is on the budget standpoint. Like, your responsibility is to spend the money that's been allocated. And so when you're like, I need 5K to allocate to this channel, I need 5K to allocate. Like, I imagine that it's not as simple as just saying I need 5K, that there is some level of like justification of why these resources are being used, some forecasting or projection around expected return on that investment. Um, Again, I know you're like 3 weeks in, so maybe you haven't like gotten to that level yet, but I can imagine that it's only a matter of time before you do. What do you know about how that works in that system? And do you imagine that there is a time where you come up against having to do things that you haven't had to do before? Like projections and forecasting is hard. And like in my role, I'm doing some of that stuff and I never had to before. And I'm curious if like you get the sense that you might be pushed into doing certain things that you haven't had to in the past.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had the unfortunate role of doing the forecasting, in previous roles, and it is hard because
Yeah.
you don't know, especially when you're activating brand new channels. It's like, how do you forecast this? We don't know how it's performed for us in the past. We don't know how it's going to perform for us in the future.
Yeah.
We can make like assumptions, and that's great and all, but we need some hard numbers. In this role, luckily, I'm not on the hook for that. We have a budget number in customer marketing in our division of growth that we have, and it's basically looking at what campaigns do we want to run for the rest of the year, and do we need additional budget or paid ad spend to put behind it. Um, and I've come from backgrounds of not spending any money to promote certain activity, whether it's a webinar or just new product launch. We can run that through our email marketing systems. But here, like, we do have budget to run ads through 6 cents to target accounts, and to work with our demand gen team to run paid ads against a certain initiative that we're launching for certain types of segments. So it really comes down to the long term goals of our team, and really like the revenue goals of our team. What are we trying to hit for certain segments? So we really try to break it out by our ecosystems that we address. We're a tax compliance software, so we integrate into ERPs like Oracle, SAP, NetSuite, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of looking long term at the end of the day, like, all right, like, what are we on the hook for from a revenue goal perspective, from an upsell, cross sell, and how are we tracking? And so, do we need to spend more money? And if not, great. But we're an enterprise software, so we are spending money, and it really just comes down to the type of campaign that we're running. Right now, we're really focused on we have a on-premise solution, which is like these legacy these enterprise companies that are using like our legacy software that's not in the cloud, right? And so we have a huge initiative going on to migrating them off of that into our cloud software, because it's just more money in our pockets from a business perspective. Just so we don't have to service that business anymore. And yeah, it really just comes down to the needs and like where we're tracking, from a goal perspective. So again, yeah, 3 weeks in, I don't have like a really good answer for that. It's a really long-winded way to say I don't really know. It just really comes down to like when I launched my first campaign with this company to say, all right, here's my project, here's my my project brief or my campaign brief, and
Mm-hmm.
here's what I want to accomplish. Here's who I want to reach. Can we utilize 6 cents? Can we utilize some paid ad budget like through LinkedIn to do this and get everybody on the same page there? Because again, like, I think for myself anyways, like, I would execute that 6 cents campaign. I would execute that LinkedIn campaign myself.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that here. I would put that through the system. I would work with that demand gen team to help get that set up, but they would be the ones launching it, optimizing it, and we would jam on the results and go from there. So it's a much different experience than I've ever had before.
Yeah, the cross departmental, cross functional collaboration is one that was a topic that was on my mind, specific to that because you were talking about it, specific to brand and creative, because you mentioned that earlier too, but also like our background and what we're doing right this second is in content creation, and it's, I think, always been a through line. It's, I mean, it's where you started your career in marketing, and it's always been a through line, throughout each of our kind of positions and roles. So is there room for content creation in your current role, or is that something that now gets outsourced to a different department and you're beholden to that? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I think like there's some flexibility there because, well, so I can absolutely like write my own email content, landing page content, and everything like that. Um, we do have a content team, or maybe there's like a couple people on that team that are handling like some of the larger projects. But like for our specific group, like if I wanted to write the email sequences that I want to launch for a campaign, I can absolutely do that, run that by them and say, hey, how does it look? Just to make sure that I'm staying in line with, our messaging and, and brand positioning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so which is nice. And same thing with landing page creation. I can sort of in my mind and with the copy design the landing page. We like any sort of like selling landing page. It follows a pretty simple template, and so it's here's all the content. You can plug it in as you want. Here's the CTA, so on and so forth. So there is flexibility there for me to be able to influence that part of the content side, um, but also on the graphic design side too. It's like presenting, hey, here's my main headline, here's my main message, here's maybe a subtitle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I haven't done yet, and I feel like at this point in time, like there could be some flexibility there to request, hey, I think it should look like this or look like this. Take
Yeah.
that as however you want, as a design team, within the brand, within the confines of the brand. Um, I don't want to disrupt anything, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's room for influence there as well. But yeah, I mean, basically, the way I'm approaching my campaign setups is let me deliver all the content up front to all the teams that need to see it and need to be involved in it. And so I'm not asking anybody to write things for me. Maybe they revise things, but um, I'm very much, coming into this as I'm going to flex that creative muscle from a content side, and let the teams that run the website, run the graphics, you guys bring my vision to life, basically.
Yeah. Basically using the campaign or project or creative brief as your way to have your fingerprints on the final product, and
Exactly.
figuring out who in those departments you can collaborate really well with, and that there's like some synergy, because there's going to be certain people in certain departments that are a little bit more control oriented, and no, we're not going to do that, this is how we do it. And that's just a part of large organization politics. But I imagine that you'll find and run into people that like dig, you kind of have similar wavelengths when it comes to like creative execution.
Yeah. Well, what I've found so far is that most of the other teams they want the collaboration,
Oh,
and
good.
that yeah. So like up to this point, like because my like who I report into, she just started 3 months ago, right? Like this sector of customer marketing really is just getting built out,
It's like the startup
and
within the
it's
enterprise.
exactly. And so like that's kind of how I'm viewing it is like we can like there's due process here, but like there's some flexibility because we're sort of a new team that's getting built out here from a growth perspective within customers.
Yeah.
And so like what I'm seeing is in the past it's like customer marketing just kind of did whatever the hell they wanted to do, and didn't really I don't want to say this in a bad way, right? It's like it's just there was no process. People just did what they thought they needed to do. But
Hmm.
now it's like, okay, well, if this is going to be a thing, customer marketing's a thing, we got to all be aligned. The cross-functional teams need to be aligned. We need to have these regular meetings. So that's what my supervisor is doing now. Like my manager is like roping everybody in. It's just like, all right, like let's all get on the same page. Everything that customer marketing on the growth side does, like it's going to get run by inside sales and customer success. Make sure we're all on the same page here. And so we're bringing this collaboration in, and we're forming this this collective group that when we do things on the customer marketing side, that everybody signed off on it. We've all seen it, and we all feel good about it. And it just feels more holistic at the end of the day. We're not just yeah, we are like kind of a startup within a larger organization, but we're trying to sort of fill in the gaps that were there before.
Yeah. You mentioned marketing ops and you mentioned Sixth Sense too. And just like a tool that gets talked a lot about in the B2B SaaS space. And in startups, you essentially are like, we'll never have this because of their price point. Um, but it reminded me of GTMA back in the day when we were able to move from Hootsuite to Sprout. That was like a big deal, and getting access to Martech that like was
Yeah.
professionalized and delivered reporting that was like that you could take seriously and you can actually drill down into. I just remember that like really opening up a lot of doors, and so yeah, talk me through like from a tech standpoint, what are you working with? What's kind of new in this process? How's that world been?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, jeez, I remember, yeah, migrating off of Hootsuite to Sprout. Sprout was such a big jump for us, um, even just from like a contract negotiation standpoint, and us being like sort of an enterprise customer. Yeah, like Martech's so important, and I've had varying experiences with Martech in my different organizations where like at Flowcast, we were like on Salesforce and Pardot. Um, we had Sprout because I introduced Sprout to them, just from like a reporting and just, functionality standpoint. And then moving, into Rentspree using HubSpot and all their tools. And now back here with Vertex, it's back to Salesforce, Pardot, but now we're using things like Alice, which is like a gift sending software
Mm.
that you can integrate into Salesforce. Um, Sixth Sense again, that's an ABM software. So I did ABM at Flowcast, and those are really like the ABM side of things, especially with Sixth Sense, is really valuable. Like when you have a high priced, ARR software, because it is a high ticket item, you're going after certain types of accounts. You can feed all that information and feed your Salesforce data into this platform to really hone in and create personalized experiences for your target accounts. We did a little bit with that with Rentspree, but we were so small, it was such a waste of money, unfortunately. But we're doing it here at Vertex because, again, big company now, Salesforce, main CRM, and we're able to really hone in on these enterprise level companies, using this particular tool. Um, and that's mainly for, like, I think Demand Gen's probably using that probably 75% of the time.
Hmm.
We're using it from the cross sell upsell component, right? So like we already have the customers, we already know who they are. So we're just sort of feeding them into that software, and really looking at more or less, their behavior within our platform, and understanding, are they ready for, upgrading to this specific service, or adopting this specific solution. Um, so I'm still getting into the weeds of that, super brand new, but when you look at sort of like the Martech systems, I mean, large enterprise, like you're going to have access to so many different things.
Yeah.
Whereas on the smaller scale, you're like, you're using GA quite a bit. You're trying to scrape, the bottom of the barrel to just get some insight into, what are people doing on your website, but more or less, if you have a SaaS product, whether it's like Amplitude or some other type of software, Pendo or whatever, like what are people doing in your app so that you can, get a better sense of behavioral data. And I think that's like the biggest thing is, when we're looking at, Martech, it's really looking at that sort of thing, especially in this customer marketing role, because it's like they're already customers. Like, what else can we do with them? It's like, well, let's look
Hmm.
at like what they're actually doing in our product. What are they most interested in? What are they looking at on our website? And let's create campaigns around things like that. Especially from like a fintech standpoint. These customers are on different types of ERPs, and so communications and marketing has to be really tailored towards what environment or ecosystem they're in, right? I'm not gonna
Yeah.
You can't just do like a mass marketing email around upgrading somebody to a certain feature or product. It's, well, if you're on SAP, if you're on Oracle, if you're on this, it's
Yeah.
very tailored and personalized. So that's why we like the account based aspect too. It's because we can do those sorts of things.
Yeah. Makes sense. Another thing I was thinking about in the kind of like cross departmental conversation is like we talked a little bit about kind of like the horizontal view across the marketing department, but I'm thinking like vertically. You're probably the role that you're in now is probably like the most removed you are from like marketing leadership. So if we're thinking about like CMO, VP, director, like how that all scales up the ladder, like what's it like being kind of, I guess, a smaller cog in the machine from that perspective? Like does it feel weird being removed from a person that might contain the kind of like high level vision for what marketing's supposed to be and do, compared to previous roles where you basically either were defining that vision yourself or working directly with the person that was?
Yeah, it's definitely uncomfortable because even when I was a part of larger marketing teams, larger meaning maybe 10 people, 12 people, and I was just a piece in that machine. There was still a lot of room to influence and to establish foundational, strategies and tactics. But here, yeah, it's different. It's uncomfortable because I want to do those things, like I inside of me, right? It's like instinctually, like I want to figure out like where the deficiencies are and like where can we improve things, and I think that's a good thing. But also in this specific situation, because I've been doing it for so long, like with small marketing teams, where now it's like, all right, well, now I have like a focus. Like now I'm in customer marketing. All right, now I have like certain ecosystems or segments that I'm focused on. Um, certain features or solutions I'm focused on, and I can sort of understand how this all fits into the larger picture. And
Yeah.
and I think that's a good benefit to see how these bigger organizations operate and how we fit into the larger picture. Um, because I haven't had that before. It's always been, like, yeah, the direct line to the CEO. Great. That's awesome. But now it's not like that. And now it's just, hey, I'm just an individual contributor that is adding to a piece of a puzzle of larger marketing. But let me see that impact, and how that all folds up to a large publicly traded company. And I kind of like that experience. I like getting all sides of things, um, and I think that'll be just a good experience down the road, just to see how this company does marketing in that large capacity.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm kind of picturing like the playbook in smaller organizations is essentially always unfinished in various states of completion, and you you work things out as you need to do them. So if you're like, all right, we're going to activate this channel, like figuring out how to do it, and you don't have like the process for like analyzing campaigns and what to do when you see X, Y, and Z, and how you're doing creative testing in a channel, like all these things that like you figure out as you have time in a smaller organization. Whereas in a big one, you have a more complete playbook, and like you only have to focus on one chapter, and it's already like partially written, and you're able to see like other mature departments that are operating off of like multi-year cycles at this point in time. That's going to be invaluable experience for you, whether you stay in that org and learn their system and ecosystem and move within it, or go back to the small scale startup at some point in the future, and you can bring those learnings into that role.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've been thinking about, because here it's as I mentioned before, things are planned out. Like H2 is pretty much planned out. There's some flexibility, some wiggle room, some things that may change, but for the most part, it's like, all right, here are the product releases. Here's how customer marketing supporting this. Here's our time frame. So we need to start building out these product briefs now, and understanding what channels we want to activate, so we can get requests into brand and design and all that stuff. And then post launch, or post campaign launch, it's working with the marketing ops team to understand, like, okay, what reports do we want to generate, what insights do we want to gain from all these things. Getting those requests in, or at least notating them or writing them down to be like, all right, at some point I'm going to have to request X, Y, and Z from this team,
Mm-hmm.
is such a it's good experience to then bring to then going to a smaller team to be like, hey, I've done it here. I know what needs to happen from a pre-launch, post-launch, perspective, to then bring to a smaller team that's like, well, what do we do? It's like, well, okay, well, sure, like small team, like you don't need to plan it that far in advance, but
Right.
there's planning that needs to be involved. You can instill
Mm-hmm.
this, this mentality of planning to a point where there's still some flexibility, but you're holding people accountable to certain deadlines and things like that. And then you're outlining those KPIs, and you're teeing up whether you have a data team, marketing ops team, or not, which is great if you have a marketing ops team, because that makes it so much easier. Because I hate digging. I mean, I love digging into the data, but then it's like digging into the BI reports and like pulling all this crap. It's like it can get tedious and time consuming. So it's always nice to have somebody that knows their way around these certain things. But to know like what reports you want generated, and so you can you can do like a retrospective and analyze things afterwards, to bring that to the table. It's I kind of think of it like the show The Bear, right? Like where like Carmi, he works for this big best restaurant in the world type of thing, had to learn all these different things, and he's trying to bring this all to like this to the original beef restaurant, which had no
Mm-hmm.
process, chaos, and he's trying to like bring all these insights into this you know different environment, smaller, chaotic environment. And that's kind of how I'm looking at this. It's like, let me see how this big, well-oiled machine is doing things, and yeah, who knows? Like, who knows what will happen, down the road with Vertex and where I go from here. Um, but I love the idea of like gaining insight, and seeing how this company is run, and how this specifically the marketing organization is run, to then be able to like bring that somewhere else, or build on it here, what have you.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm approaching it at this point.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds like a
Yeah.
great opportunity. So to wrap things up, I always like to kind of bring it back to maybe the earlier stage marketer who's either starting to think about applying to new roles that are in larger organizations, or maybe they're about to start one. Like, what's the three tips that you would have for them to get their kind of mindset right, prepare mentally, yeah, what would you say to someone in that position?
For somebody that's going to like take on like a large marketing team type gig.
Yeah, it's going from small to large.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to be open to the change because you know you're not going to come in there like dictating the change. You know, you're sort of a piece of the puzzle. Um,
So you can't be a change maker.
Not right away, you
Yeah.
know. But if you find, but I think like there's oftentimes you're going to find opportunities to point out like, hey, I think this could be different. You know, just based on the way you think or based on previous experience. So there is opportunity for that. Not to say that like you got to go in there and just be the soldier. Like, you know, don't be the change maker right away. Like integrate yourself really well. Um, Develop cross-functional relationships so far in my experience have been key. You know, like I have a good relationship with my like close internal team, but I've started reaching out to like customer success and inside sales and just to say hello, not to say, you know, not to like say I'm here to disrupt things.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously they've got their own process and everything, but it's but hey, we're all here to work together. So I think, you know, making sure that, you know, if it's a large marketing team that you are being visible, that your face is around, you're not just like a forgotten entity in the whole group. I think just be a voice. I think again, I think it kind of is like kind of two and three are kind of the same. It's just, you know, I've been a part of a few different meetings with like the larger teams where it's like I kind of sat back and relaxed because I was like week one, week two in the books, and I was just like fly in the wall. But what I'm seeing is like in these types of meetings and things where people are looking for ideas, to not necessarily be like just the guy that's like, well, I'm just going to see how things go, and I'll like when I'm more established, I'll pipe up. Like if there's an opportunity to kind of chime in early and establish your voice in the team, I think that's a big thing, especially like you know with a big company where you could get forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I was thinking about that last week. I was a part of a big meeting, bigger ish meeting, and I was the fly in the wall because it was like the first big meeting I was a part of. And I was like, I just want to see how it goes. But then I filed that away where I was like, all right, next one that happens when, you know, when our head of customer marketing's like, you know, anybody have anything or any ideas, blah, blah, blah. Like I want to come to the table with something because I want to get on that map a little bit. I don't want to be, you know, just the new hire. You know, I think that's a big deal for me is to not just be the new guy, is to feel like and to establish myself as a part of the team.
Yeah, makes sense. Good tips. I like that. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for sharing this journey that you've had so far. It's been super insightful, and hopefully, many people get some value out of it. And we'll
I
make
hope
sure to
so.
check in with you as you go forward
It's been a
because
rough journey
I feel like
last
I feel
year
like
in a
in a
year's
few
time.
months you'll have like a different perspective, you know, like you'll have more. And so I want to make sure we keep
Totally.
checking in. And I mean, this podcast in general, every time we do it, we draw from our current experiences, for the most part. So that will color kind of how you come into these conversations. And I'm looking forward to that. It'd be cool.
Yeah, me too. So we'll check back in a couple months and see how things are going. Yeah, at that point I should be really fully integrated into the team and running some good campaigns and and developing some cool playbooks for customer marketing, which I love. I mean, like you know, again, product marketing experience and everything, like customer focused. Um, you know, it's a cool discipline to dig my teeth into.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, to everyone listening in, thanks so much for tuning in. We will come back with another great episode of the Marketing Grind sometime soon. We're on no schedule. But if you are listening to this, subscribe, download, do the things that you're supposed to do with podcasts. But honestly, like we'd love to hear from you if you are listening to this. Drop a comment, shoot us an email,
Yeah, how do we
wherever you're
do that?
getting this. Just
How do people get in touch with us?
Just find us. Just Google it. It's all out there. The information's there.
All right.
All right.
DM us at Hopped on Instagram.
Hopped. All right. That's it. See you later.
All right. Bye bye.